Hello everybody, welcome to Anemone TCG. Today we're going to be looking at the BlackWarGreymon X Antibody deck. This deck's been running absolutely rampant in the BT11 meta, so join us as we look at some of the cards and combos and strategies that go into building this absolutely powerhouse of a deck. So looking at the general kind of strategies here, just to see if this is a deck that would fit with your particular playstyle. Typically what you want to be doing here is creating a huge BlackWarGreymon stack. Typically this will have the BT8 BlackWarGreymon in it, and then finished off with the X Antibody that we've just had released in BT11. You're going to have blocker, reboot, the ability to redirect attack, so it's a real defensive deck. You're also going to have BT8 Metal Greymon in this deck, which lets you swing into your opponent's unsuspended Digimon, so you have some real board pressure there where your opponent can't leave anything hanging up for too long because you'll just swing into it and clear it. And BT8 Blackwell Greymon lets you clear tamers as well, so if you're struggling against opponents who play a lot of tamers, this deck will let you clear those off to keep their entire board clear. You've also got Digimon like Greymon in this that let you build up security attack, so you can swing into your opponent's security stack and clear everything out nice and easy breezy. Starting off nice and simply here with our Digitama, Digi-Egg, we're playing the BT9 Koromon here. All of the Agumons we'll be playing in this deck are red. This is a real red based deck here rather than the black support that we got in BT11. This Koromon here provides us with a little bit of extra bulk, so we can swing into more of our opponent's unsuspended Digimon, giving us the ability to clear those off even if they've got a nice big level 6 on the field. We'll be playing 4 copies of this Digi-Egg. Moving on to our level 3s, our rookies here, we've got 4 different types of Agumon. These are best broken up into pairs, so the first pair we have here is the BT5 Agumon and the BT9 X Antibody. These are fantastic searchers that are just going to make sure that we get all the pieces that we need to consistently build up our stack in the order that we want to build it. You've got the Promo Agumon and the Starter Deck 1 Agumon here as well, which provide bulk, plus 2k and plus 1k, allowing you to swing into things again nice and safely, whether it's your opponent's Digimon on the board or your opponent's stack, just swinging into them to make sure that we are nice and safe when we're clearing those off the field. We've got our fantastic range of level 4s here. We've got the Greymon X Antibody and the new one here, the black-red one in the bottom right. These provide fantastic protection for your main stack of cards. They both have varying inherited effects that let you reduce the impact of effects to your stack, so if things were going to delete you, Gaia Force and things like that, you have the ability to negate those effects. You've got the BT8 Greymon, the black one in the top right, which can evolve onto a red Digimon, so we're not struggling there, but this provides blocker to the stack while we have a red Digimon in play. Once you're building out past this Greymon, most of your Digimon are going to be black and red, so you will typically always have a red Digimon in play, allowing you to access that blocker. And the BT5 Greymon there allows us to get a cheap 1-cost evolution whilst providing 2k worth of bulk to our stack, so we will never really struggle to get over something if we have this card and our Koromon in our stack. So we've got our level 5s here. We've got Metal Greymon from BT8 and the new BT11 Metal Greymon X Antibody. Both of these have fantastic inherited effects that are particularly deadly. The BT8 Metal Greymon lets you swing into your opponent's unsuspended Digimon. Whilst you have Dragonkin or Machine in your stack, you'll always have Dragonkin once you're past this Digimon, so you're accessing the inherited. And the X Antibody one makes your opponent trash a card when a Digimon becomes unsuspended. So if you're playing against something like Alt Force Vidramon that's constantly wanting to unsuspend itself, your opponent is having to trash a card to pay to do that, essentially. They've also got fantastic when digivolving effects. The BT8 Metal Greymon lets you de-digivolve something and then delete a 3k Digimon, which helps you deal with your opponent's floodgates. And the BT11 X Antibody Metal Greymon lets you delete slightly bigger Digimon, it's 6k, and gives your stack some protection, which is very beneficial. If you think of it like a BlackWarGreymon, which has been limited, it's a similar effect, so I can imagine that this card potentially may get limited too, just because it shares the same niche as BlackWarGreymon. Our level 6s here, we've got the BT8 Blackwell Greymon, which has been particularly oppressive for several kind of metas now. It lets you delete tamers, which are typically bread and butter for most other decks at this point, and it combos nicely with the BT8 blocker, the Black Greymon that we saw earlier, because on all turns when it deletes a Digimon it can unsuspend itself, so it allows you to get 2 blocks consistently. You've got the Gaimon in the background, has a whole host of effects on it: de-digivolve, security attack, reboot, and blitz, allowing you to provide, allowing you to access the ability to remove some of your opponent's tools that are particularly difficult to deal with in the de-digivolve, but also allowing you to swing with the blitz and then reboot, allowing you to provide more aggression. Potentially, if you've got the blocker under there, you can keep that nice and safe so you can block the next turn as well because you've rebooted. And the BlackWarGreymon X Antibody, which is the real star of this new deck, is kind of a defensive powerhouse because it allows you to reboot, so you can get those swings in and then have the blocker and the ability to redirect attacks to it on the next turn as well. So it really shuts down your opponent's plays if they don't have the ability to get over it. And with all the protection that you can put on this stack, with the tamer we'll look at later, and stuff like Metal Greymon X, this card is particularly difficult to deal with. And our level 7 here, this card, Omnimon X Antibody, provides that kind of final little burst of utility that you may need, but it does sacrifice some of the strong inherited effects. Some of the inherited effects that you have will say, while this card's name is Greymon, or while you have a red Digimon in play, if you're evolving into this Digimon, you're often sacrificing some of those, but the effects are usually strong enough that it negates needing access to those things. And of course, if it does say you need a red Digimon in play or something like that, you can always play a little Agumon on the field and still access blocker and things for this stack. Typically you're getting the cheaper Digivolution because you're going to prioritize having an X Antibody in your Digivolution stack, and this card lets you repeatedly remove strong options from your opponent's security because you'll normally have several, usually a couple level 6s in your stack. So you'll have your BlackWarGreymon, you'll evolve into the BlackWarGreymon X for a cheap cost, and then you'll go into the Omnimon X Antibody, allowing you to do that. The effect of Omnimon X Antibody, which is remove a level 6 to look at your opponent's stack, trash a card, put those cards back and shuffle them, and then you can usually do that twice, maybe 3 times if you've got the X Antibody still in there and you haven't removed it to defend yourself from something. So it's a very strong card. Moving on to our tamers here, we've got Coolboy, who's got the fantastically cheap cost of 2 to play, and when you do play them you can reveal the top 3 cards of your deck and take out an X Antibody and a Digimon with X Antibody, so you can pick the specific piece that you need to continue building your stack in order to get that consistency. And when you evolve into a Digimon of the same level, which you'll be doing frequently throughout your game, you can suspend it to gain 1 memory and draw 1. We've also got Yuya here, who's new for BT11. Yuya is a memory setter, which is fantastic because it means your opponent really can't choke you out, and also lets you access some extra power for your Digimon, as well as some defensive options if you're evolving into a Digimon of the same level. And our option cards here, we're starting off with the red memory boost. This lets you access kind of the draw you need sometimes just to pick out a specific piece of the stack that you're missing, a particular X Antibody or something like that, as well as giving the option to bank some memory in order just to go for those slightly more extended plays if you are in a position where you are being choked for memory. Hades Force, which is new for BT11, fantastically strong removal and relatively cheap. You'll typically have a large Greymon in play, and this card really benefits from the bigger your Greymon is, the more damage it can do. An X Antibody is typically a defensive option here, which lets you kind of put it under your stack and then you can remove it later on to negate effects and things like that, but also lets you evolve into X Antibody Digimon as you're attacking, which is fantastic. Typically at this point in the video we'll look at combos for the deck, but from playing it, the deck's pretty self-explanatory. You build up into a big stack and it's typically very defensive, and then you might have some security attack and you can swing with that. But what I'd like to do instead this time is look at a variation of the deck. This is a deck I've been testing mainly because I don't have the BT8 BlackWarGreymon, so I've been playing it with the promo BlackWarGreymon and the Digiburst Agumon. I've been finding that this deck, just for reference, the BlackWarGreymon promo lets you Digiburst 2 to unsuspend it. So you can have a massive stack with lots of X Antibody underneath it. Typically you'll have some powerful effects that you usually don't want to trash, but there are some cards that you can remove from your stack and be just fine. So you'll have to make some decisions about what you do want to remove and what you don't, but it's not typically overcomplicated. And then you can keep unsuspending this Blackwell Greymon, and then once it's suspended for the final swing, it lets you go up into your BlackWarGreymon X. It will reboot, and then it will maintain some of those defensive things that you haven't taken out of your stack. So you can remove what you don't need, keep what you do need, in order to go into the Blackwell Greymon X and let it still have the defensive capabilities. When I've been playing this variation, I've been swapping out some of the like the promo Agumon and things like that for the Digiburst Agumon, just because this lets us cycle this Agumon in order to make sure we always have a rookie so we can start a new stack. Because this Digimon will shred some of those defensive options, so it's going to be a little bit more fragile, so it's always best to have another stack building up in raising. So here's the kind of standard layout that I've been seeing people play for Blackwell Greymon. This isn't the Digiburst version, but the kind of standardized one. I've been coming up against similar formatted decks like this in tournament once or twice. Again, by no means optimal. There are a few tweaks that you could make, but this is what I think would serve you best were you to enter in most tournaments. You'll have a lot of tools here just to do as well as possible. I have found in tournaments this deck does struggle against Grandis, just because Grandis has the power to swing into your stack, isn't concerned about that redirect, because you'll just swing into the stack, pierce it, and keep swinging into security, no problems. But if you can get past Grandis, this deck does fantastically against things like Alt Force that wants to be unsuspending constantly, Mirage Galgamon and stuff like that. So you'll really punish those sort of decks if you can get past Grandis, which isn't too difficult because, say, this deck is very strong and very consistent. So please let me know if you run a slightly different variation of the deck. What do you change? What do you add? If you're having success with this deck, which I'm sure many people playing this will be, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.